Bucks head coach Jason Kidd says the Sixers played them tough.
You know, Brett is going to have those guys playing hard. They've been playing hard. They've been in some games, and you know, the ball just hasn't bounced their way. But they got some talented young players over there that play hard, and you know, this game could have gone either way. And we were very fortunate to get some stops and then some baskets on the other end.
Dwight Howard racked up 23 points and 14 rebounds as the Rockets outlasted the Magic 119-114 in overtime at the Toyota Center. Howard says they are trying to improve every time out.
We got a long season. Like I said, it's a marathon, and want to make sure that we get better each game. I know personally for myself, I want to make sure that each game I'm pushing myself to get in better shape.
For USA Radio Sports, I'm Tammy Rose.
Chronicling the latest cannabis industry news and headlines.
Well, with 4 states with tax and regulate and the District of Columbia.
The state of cannabis.
Oh my God, it's refreshing. We have people that generally wouldn't speak on behalf of cannabis for fear of retribution, fear of losing your practices, fear of many of those things, and find ourselves in a place that we finally can.
Bringing you fact-based news and views and keeping listeners on the pulse of what's happening in the industry today. The state of cannabis. On demand anytime, only on CannabisRadio.com.
Your connection to quality cannabis insurance services is spelled Kaercher. That's Karcher Insurance. We have worked with ventures like cannabis for over 60 years. We're proud to represent over 50 companies with tailor-made cannabis plans for owners just like you to insure your product, your plants, and your pursuits. Kaercher spells out their full-service insurance services ranging from commercial.
This is the USA Radio Business Report. I'm Russ Jones. Federal regulators are hitting Japanese airbag maker Takata with the largest fine in the history of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. NHTSA Administrator Mark Rosekind announced the penalty.
Takata agrees to pay the largest civil penalty in NHTSA's history, $200 million. It must pay $70 million in cash and remaining amounts if it violates the terms of NHTSA orders.
Takata will have to phase out and recall all the defective airbag inflators that have been known to rupture. Officials are also accelerating recalls of the defective airbags.
It orders the 12 manufacturers that have issued Takata recalls to complete those recalls on an accelerated schedule and to prioritize vehicles based on risk.
More than 19 million vehicles in the U.S. have already been recalled over the issue. This is the USA Radio Business Report. I'm Russ Jones.
Hi, I'm Montel Williams. Most of you know me as a talk show host, but I'm also an author, actor, single father of 4, avid snowboarder, and I'm also a medical marijuana patient. Living with multiple sclerosis, I'm in pain every day. Medical marijuana is my last resort, and it helps me when all other drugs have failed. If you'd like more information about medical marijuana, you can contact the Marijuana Policy Project at mpp.org or call 1-877-JOIN-MPP.
About all things cannabis. This is CannabisRadio.com, a service of Cannabis Media. Stand by for another great hour of CannabisRadio.com. But first, let's get you informed with news around the world in 90 seconds.
USA Radio News, I'm Anthony Lucero. U.S. intelligence officials believe a bomb may have brought down the Russian plane over Egypt last weekend. An official tells CNN that a bomb planted in a piece of luggage or somewhere else on the plane likely brought the jet down, although no solid conclusion has yet been reached. The source says ISIS or an ISIS-linked affiliate is likely responsible. Authorities in Illinois are calling the shooting death of a police officer a carefully staged suicide. The Lake County Major Crimes Task Force says an overwhelming amount of evidence shows Lieutenant Charles Joseph Glenowitz took his own life after committing extensive criminal acts. A former Taco Bell executive caught on video punching an Uber driver is publicly apologizing for the incident. Benjamin Golden has issued a statement taking responsibility for his actions, and his attorney says Golden is making efforts to meet with the driver so that he can make another apology in person. This is USA Radio News, powered by westernjournalism.com.
From Feature Story News in London, I'm Ollie Barrett. UK Prime Minister David Cameron is hosting Egypt's President Sisi for talks in London as Britain grounds flights out of Sharm el-Sheikh over security fears. Myanmar's opposition leader Aung San Suu Kyi says she will be above the president if she wins Sunday's election. And a major rescue operation is underway in Lahore in Pakistan to save what's thought to be dozens of people trapped in rubble after a factory collapsed.
Dr. Dabber, hurry! Its temperature is shooting past 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It's burning up.
I'm afraid for this little guy, it's just too late.
What caused the problem?
Only Dr. Dabber can maintain the perfect temperature for a smooth-tasting, slower burn. This standard vaporizer lost all of its health benefits, sending it up in smoke.
So you're telling me that most vapor pens burn so hot they produce smoke, not vapor?
Correct. Keep away from those standard vaporizer pens and turn to Dr. Dabber. Doctor's orders.
Less heat, more flavor.
The smoke is rising, and the next crop of podcasts devoted to cannabis providers and enthusiasts are ready to be harvested. Welcome to the Cannabis Radio Network, founded by respected rainmakers who have been producing award-winning podcasts for over a decade. Industry headlines, business updates, medical reports, marketing, and e-commerce education rolled up perfectly for your consumption. Let's grow together. The Cannabis Radio Network. CannabisRadio.com.
Knowledge is the key. CannabisRadio.com is here to keep you in the know on Just Say No. Did you know there are over 100 medical conditions that can benefit from cannabis therapy? Just Say No talks to patients who have used cannabis to treat their medical symptoms and create a better quality of life. Each week, we will tackle a chronic condition by talking to patients, doctors, and researchers with the goal to helping you live, learn, and thrive. Just say yes to Just Say No. Now here is your host, Ryan Hunt from MJWellness.com.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Ryan Hunt from MJWellness.com, and welcome to Just Say No. Each week here on Just Say No, we evaluate, investigate, and give a thorough look at all the various diseases we think that cannabis therapy can help. Today on our show, we're very excited. We're going to be talking about our guts. Today's guest is Dr. Jennifer Burns. Dr. Burns has been in practice since 2005 and founded the Benitre Center in Arizona in 2011. The Benitre Center is a family practice with an emphasis on gastrointestinal health. Hello, Dr. Burns, and thank you for joining us.
Hey there. So, I'm glad to be here.
So, straight off, Dr. Burns, I wish you were my doctor. I have been treating my ulcerative colitis for about 2 years and recently discovered marijuana. And part of the reason we have this show is because I'm very interested in how it affects and helps me personally, and it kind of expanded from there. I know that you have a personal story too. You've battled with IBS for 20 years? Yes,
it was a struggle first. I mean, when you're first finding out and then you're going to doctor after doctor and they're just like, I don't know. I mean, it's like IBS was hardly talked about 20 years ago compared to where it is now, where it's like more mainstream. So I can understand the frustrations that a lot of people have when they can't find out what's going on and they're needing answers.
Is that why you got into digestive health?
Yes, that's a big reason why I got into digestive health, is because no one had any answers, and all you left with was pharmaceutical drugs and being frustrated at the doctor because they're just like, here, try this. And of course, back then, 20 years ago, they didn't have a lot of the medications that they have now. So it's basically a lot of, like painkillers and stuff is all they were saying.
Yeah, I feel like I see a lot of pharmaceutical commercials for IBS. What is a typical day dealing with IBS like?
Well, let's see. If we're talking about 20 years ago to now, for me personally, Personally, oh my gosh, I would have anxiety before I even left the house. I had to map out where the bathrooms were, so in that way I knew I could at least make it to certain points before I had to get to my final destination. I talk about eating food. I couldn't do it. It's like any little thing would just upset my IBS. It was terrible. And I can understand that because a lot of people go through that on their daily basis. And then, of course, when you're anxious, it makes the IBS worse. And then you're just in this continual cycle.
Yeah, with IBS, is it a urinary thing or what is it?
IBS is basically irritable bowel syndrome, which is irritation of the colon. It can also include a little bit of the small intestines too. So basically what we're looking at is intestinal inflammation. Some people can have constipation with this type of inflammation. Some people have diarrhea with this type of inflammation, and some people have a combination of both with it. It just really depends on a person's stress level, the level that the IBS is at, because there are varying degrees of it, from just like minor to very severe. And so because of that, everything varies as far as what they're having to do in order to manage it. I do know that there are pharmaceutical agents out today that actually do help be able to maintain some of it as far as the spasms and stuff like that people are having. Nausea can also come in with it as well. But there's more knowledge as far as diet and stuff like that goes. It's like for me, I was just trying out so many different types of herbs to try and rebuild my gut back up. And then I guess the final stroke for me was actually having to deal with how I dealt with stress, how I looked and perceived stress, any little thing. Like I said, even just walking out of the house. And so after I was able to do that, I noticed that a lot of my IBS symptoms calmed down. I went on a gluten-free diet. There are still anti-inflammatory herbs that I use, but I'm actually able to maintain now. I can walk out of my house without having anxiety, thinking I may have to stop off somewhere, because something's going to happen at any moment or given time.
I know what you're saying. I've lived through that, and it tends to flare up. Is IBS something that flares up as well? Goes into remission and flares up. And you said it's anxiety has a big part to do with that, right?
Yes, definitely. So yes, you can have parts of remission, parts where it flares up. People could go years in remission and then all of a sudden it flares up again. Or people will go weeks with remission and then it flares up again. So it just really depends on each person. Just like with ulcerative colitis, each person is different here again with the severity of their symptoms on if it's going into remission or if it's flaring up most of the time.
I guess I have a question about that, actually. What is the difference between ulcerative colitis, Crohn's, and IBS? I didn't know IBS had such intense flare-ups, but does it present itself as a bloody stool?
It can end up with bloody stool with IBS. You also get mucus that comes out with it as well. IBS is basically inflammation of the colon because it's irritated. And it doesn't, whenever the doctors do a colonoscopy, there's no actual damage. Like in Crohn's, it'll kind of look like this cookie cutter thing where you got some areas that are healthy and some areas that aren't. And so they can kind of tell with that one. With ulcerative colitis, here again, it's ulcerations that are occurring in the colon, which creates this inflammation. IBS doesn't have any ulcerations. You're not getting dead areas in the colon like you do with Crohn's, but it's just basically overall inflammation. Everything else has been ruled out, so this is basically what it is.
Oh, so that's how it's diagnosed. It's just kind of a process of elimination?
Yeah, exactly.
And do we know if this is due to environmental or genetic factors? I'm 40 years old, and this came up about 2 years ago for me, and it really shocked me and flipped me upside down for a while. And how did this happen? Or how does it happen for anybody with these digestive inflammation disorders?
That depends. Yes, there can be a strong family history of it, where people have gut issues, but they don't know exactly what it was because, let's say, maybe 60 years ago, they didn't have the diagnosis of ulcerative colitis or irritable bowel syndrome. They're just saying, okay, it's their stomach hurt, they're having abdominal pain. Sometimes the doctors back then thought it was acid reflux, it was just of unknown origin. So there can be a strong family history that ends up coming down with it. They just may not know it because it's probably not diagnosed, way back when. Some people